Hello and welcome to Life with Francie podcast, a place where you will find all kinds of conversations like mental health, self love, self care, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a place where we support one another to get to the next level in personal and business life as well. Hope you enjoy this episode. Now, let's get this show started. On this episode, I am so happy to have my first male guest, Marc, and I forgot to ask him how to pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to go there. Is the host of the Relative Normal podcast, a show that focuses on mental health. He speaks about his struggle with high functioning anxiety, depression, ADHD, perfectionism, and much more. He also speaks about his journey with therapy. I met him through Podmatch, a great resource for people to find guests on their podcast. His podcast link and my Podmatch link and anything else that we mention on this episode will be in the description of the episode. Now, let's welcome Marc to my show. Thank you so much for your time. So tell me, what is Life with Marc all about?
That is, I don't know if I've ever been asked that question specifically, but thank you for having me on the show. This is very fun so far. I haven't said much and I'm having a good time, but Life with Marc is it's progress every day. It's learning every day. It's making sure that I at least get something out of my day. I learn something. I'm an ally for someone, and I just keep working hard. That's what Life with Marc is like.
I love that. So yeah, tell me more about your podcast.
So Relatively Normal is a podcast that's available on anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff, Google Podcasts. And basically it was the genesis of me going through, therapy and working on myself and coming to a realization that I wasn't alone. And that for anybody who struggles, anybody who kind of goes through bouts of depression and goes through bouts of, unbelievably hard stress, it always feels like you're alone. And through therapy and through a great therapist I had at the time, I thought that I needed to do what I can to end the stigma when it comes to mental illness, mental awareness, anytime we talk about it. And there was one specific therapy session I was having where it was just one of those really dark days I was having. And I can't think of anything specific that was going on, but the brain doesn't really care what's going on. It just does what it does sometimes. And I was just in a place where I was just begging just to be normal. And I remember my therapist asking me, like, what do you want? What do you need? Like, what's going on? And I said, I just want to be normal. I want to be like the people I see outside that are just carefree and living, their lives and just be normal. And he explained to me, his words were, normal is relative. Like, this is your normal and you have to cope differently than others. And what makes you sad doesn't make another person sad. What brings you joy doesn't make another person happy. So you have to understand that you can't compare your normal with anyone else's. It's relative. And that struck me as so just monumental and huge that I was like, he's absolutely right. And that kind of started me on this journey where I'm like, people need to find their normal and understand that their normal is theirs and no one else's. So what I do in the podcast is sometimes I have guests on that speak about their mental health. The last recording I did was for postpartum depression and anxiety. I've had psychologists on, therapists on, talk about childhood trauma. We've talked about ADHD. We've talked about high functioning anxiety. And then sometimes I just speak for about a half hour on the things that are going on in my life. And I'm not a doctor, not a therapist. I just speak about experiences and hopefully people can understand that they're not alone.
I absolutely love that. And oh my gosh, because that's the reason I started my podcast, because we all feel alone while we're going through our stuff. So I was like, and I can't shut up about anything, especially about mental health, because my family, I'm from Puerto Rico. And mental health is like a no. Like my mom already listened to a couple of the Spanish podcast episode, and she's like, "Oh, do you really have to talk about it like that?"
Like,
So I want
yes,
to end the
yes, we do.
stigma too.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we do. We absolutely do. Like, I mean, I just had a conversation with my dad the other day. I did not mean to cut you off, but it just struck me as like like our parents are like, why, like you're talking about that? Like this is my dad asked me specifically. He said, do you ever, care about people knowing this about you? And I was like, probably at one point I did, but now, no, I don't. Like I tell people at work, like I do this thing where I tell people who lead me, like, listen, this is the person I am. So if there's a day that I'm not the bubbly, joyful person I am, it's nothing wrong with me. I'm just working through some things. It's not, no, you don't have to come up to me and say something's wrong with Mark or we need to figure something out. No, I'm just going through my process. So parents need to understand, like, we have to talk about this, especially people of color, especially Black men, Black women, especially Asian people, especially Native American people. Like people of color need to talk about these things. We don't do it enough, but we need to do it. And so I commend you for at least starting this. This is a great thing you're doing.
Thank you so much. And don't worry about cutting me off, boy. You getting to speak. I'm so
Okay.
excited. I don't think we're ever gonna finish this
Okay.
interview.
Let's do it. Let's go.
So yeah, no, I can relate so much, and I love having the male perspective and an African American male, because yes, in the Black community and Hispanic community, yeah, do not, I mean, I think any culture for real, they really don't want to talk about it. And it's like I say, there's nothing wrong with me, but there's something different about my brain.
Right.
So I'm just trying to understand my brain. I just did the mental health evaluation. I get my diagnosis at the end of the month.
Okay.
And I have never been more excited about it.
Right. It's like, I mean, it's like you're opening up a book that you've probably read a couple pages of it and you think you know what's going to happen. And like something is telling you to finish it, but you can't ever finish it. And now you're getting to that point. So it, it's, as I believe, and I'm a parent of two little girls, and I believe my job is to at least prepare them to be independent thinkers, to be interdependent, to be able to function in the world on a, physical level, spiritual level, in education and whatever that they want to do. And I want them to be able to understand their feelings. And what's happened, and I'm going to speak in generalities, and I probably shouldn't, but what's happened in past generations, especially, and I'll speak in the Black community, is we've decided what we can talk about and what we can't talk about. We've basically decided that because life has been so hard for us in the past, that we can't show emotion. We can't talk about feelings. We have to just get from point A to point B by any means necessary, and we can't talk about what happened in between. And it may have worked in the past. Like, and when I say worked, it may have gotten us to where we needed to be, but there's been a lot of trauma that's happened. There's been a lot of Black men who've come home and literally had to swallow every bit of their pride because they can't open up to their family. There's been Black women who basically had to swallow all their pride because they know they're the backbone. And if they speak up, the family might fall apart. So, and then the boys and the little girls, they see this and they say, I have to mimic my dad, I have to mimic my mom, I have to emulate them. And that continuously happens. And it goes on and on and on and on. And what I'm telling people right now, at least my generation, I'm in my 40s, and my generation, let's stop this. right now. Let's stop this right now and tell our kids, please talk to us about your feelings. Please force me to listen to you. Like my girls know that, yes, I'm a strict dad, but if they say these words to me, if they come up to me and say, Daddy, I want to tell you the truth and you can't get mad. If they say those words to me, I've made an agreement with them. Whatever you tell me, I can't get mad, because I want them to know that they can be open and honest with me as before. Like, how many of us try to sneak stuff from our parents just because we like, and not just sneak physical stuff, but our feelings too. Why are you crying? No, I'm not crying. I'm not crying. No, I'm fine. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Like, no, I wasn't fine. I needed to talk to my dad. I needed to talk to my mom. But so with me, that ends now. That ends now with my kids, because I want to make sure my girls know that dad's got their back and they can say whatever they need to say to me.
That's amazing. For
Mm.
me, I don't have kids yet. I'm still working on cutting some generational curses before I go into that. And I got a lot of work ahead of me. But I am guilty of that with my mom. I
Mm-hmm.
love her to death, and she's my best friend, and I'm her best friend. But we both don't cry like in front of each other. But we have been, I moved to the United States when I was 16. So, like on the phone, she is very emotional. I'm teaching her about feelings, emotional, mental health, self care, self love. I'm teaching her in her 50s how to deal with her emotions and stuff. So then when something happens, I'm like, okay, mom, everything is okay. I love you. Good
Mm-hmm.
night. And that's the end of it. But we both know that the second that we hang up, we're both
But,
crying like
mm-hmm.
crazy.
And why so, and I know I'm on your show, but I come and ask you, like, why do you think that is? Like, what would happen right now if after this show you just hung up and you called your mom and you just cried to her on the phone? Like, what reaction would she give you?
It's just not being there to console her.
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
can't do it. I'm very protective of my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like I just did a podcast and I had a breakdown before the podcast because I did it with a different name to tell my story for the first time.
Okay.
And just to get it out, well, there was a lot of emotion. So I'm having a breakdown in the kitchen, all on the floor and everything. And I'm reminding myself that I'm okay, that I will survive these tears
Mm-hmm.
because my family acts like if you cry, you're going to die.
That's that I can that's the one good thing about, I think, growing up with my family. And my parents, my mom passed a couple of years ago because of cancer, but and I was a huge I'm
I'm sorry.
thank you, I appreciate it, but I was a huge mama's boy. Like, I was a mom. Like, listen, dudes, like, if you're a mama's boy, say you're a mama's boy. I was a mama's boy.
Thank
Like,
you.
I love to hang out with my mother, and I love to talk to my mother, and we had some of the greatest discussions. But um I was able to cry in front of my parents. The reactions were different, but at no point, I can't remember. Like, I probably was told to stop crying when it was like something silly, like, I missed an episode of Transformers or something. I don't know. But when I was truly hurt, like, I would cry and I'd be fine. The funny part about it, and I don't know if it's funny, but to me it's kind of funny, is that now I don't really cry that much. And I'm going to tell you why. And this is another, since we're going there, this is another part of my high functioning anxiety, is everything, or I think every big thing that could happen in my future that is bad, I've already played it in my mind 1,000 times. So thinking about my mother passing, my father passing, my sister, my brother, my what, all these things have played in my head 1,000 times, which is horrible to think about. It is absolutely horrible to think about. But that's my brain preparing myself for the worst things that could possibly happen. And it's tough, something I don't want to do, but it just comes out of nowhere. So if you catch me crying, like, believe me, I'm in a bad place. Like, I'm not that I'm saying I don't, but um I'm overly empathetic and I really overthink stuff. And but here's the thing about all the things I've just said. If you would have asked me these things, in my 30s, I wouldn't have known them because I hadn't gone on this journey yet. I hadn't started it yet. And I thought this journey would end when I got in shape, when I lost, a bunch of weight. I thought it would end there. Okay, I'm in shape. I'm good to go. I've gotten healthy. Oh crap, I haven't worked on my mental health at all. I didn't do that part of it. Like I messed up a little bit. So that's when I and I talk about all this stuff on my podcast and I have shows about it. And um, it's really amazing how you know this, and you kind of talked about this. You have to be intentional when you work on yourself and when you work on mental. It can't be a byproduct of something.
I
It
tried
has
it.
to
It
be.
doesn't work. It has to be
It does not work.
intentional.
It has to be intent. You have to set time in your day to say, I want to journal. I want to meditate. I want to do, mindfulness exercises. I want to go for a walk. And when you do physical activity, you have to take that part of the physical activity and say, this is for my mental well-being. You can't just go to the gym and work out and be like, I'm good now. Like, no, you have to intentionally say, or at least think, this is going to make me a better person. This is going to put me in a better spot. So when we do these shows, when we talk about it, this is us being intentional. So the people listening can say, you know what? I need to prioritize myself. I need to stop worrying about everything else and worry about my mental health.
Yeah, I love that. And as a person, as the queen of anxiety, like I call myself, I had my first anxiety panic attack,
Mm-hmm.
breakdown. I mean, I lost my shit like 6 or 7 years ago. My boogeyman showed up at my job, and by boogeyman, I mean my biological father.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it set me back. And I was like, what the heck is this? I don't want to ever feel it again. So I have been on a lot of research about anxiety, and I have been doing pretty good. I even have one podcast episode that is my survival kit for panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is like, I have my Christian music playlist, just anything positive,
Mm-hmm.
good to go, that puts you in a party mode if you have to,
Mm-hmm.
just to get your body moving, breathing, walking, calling your friends, asking for a prayer if that's your thing, or just positive vibes, whatever you believe. But I wanted to go back to what you said earlier about your anxiety and you
Mm-hmm.
thinking the worst. I love that. Yeah, the first step is self-aware,
Mm-hmm.
and I go through it too. So this is my thing. When that comes, why not think of, oh my gosh, I can't wait to grow old with this
Mm-hmm.
person. I can't wait to be in my 80s with this
Mm-hmm.
person. Switch it to something more positive.
Yeah, I mean, it it sounds good. Like that sound like I think those things too. Like, don't get me wrong, I think those things too. But it's just I want to make sure. So here's let me tell you a little bit about myself to kind of help you understand. So who's ever listening, think about just a situation where you're at a dinner party or you're at a get together and it's you and your significant other, or it doesn't, your significant other didn't have to be there. It's you, and it's that small talk portion of the night where no one knows each other. Maybe a couple people are clicky, but no one. No one really knows you. And it's like, as an adult, especially introverted adults, I'm not introverted, but introverted adults, they hate this. Like, they absolutely hate it. Like, oh, I have to go to this work function and I only know, two people there, and there's going to be 30. So there's that awkward moment in the beginning where, like, do we do small talk? Do I put myself out there? What do I do? Me in those situations, I know people feel this way. So I jump directly into it and I start introducing myself. I start getting people, dancing. I start getting people like really being comfortable, because I know someone has to do that. So in my life, I feel like at every, and this is how frustrating this is and how just absolutely exhausting it is. In every point in my life, I feel like I have to be the confident extrovert that gets people into a comfortable position. So think about that in a sense where there's no point I feel like I can just sit in the corner and watch people be awkward with each other. Like I will walk up to a group of people who I can tell awkward small talk, and I will interject myself into it and and liven up the conversation. And then people start getting more comfortable. They figure out, oh, I know this person who knows this person. Oh, they went to school with my brother. Then people start really opening up because I feel that's my responsibility. At no point was it given to me. No, no one said, like, don't get me wrong. People would be like, hey, Mark, can you come to this? Because I know you're gonna, have fun and make people have fun. Yeah, that's happened. But so when you flip that, when you go to spots that, like, when there's a funeral, or when someone's dying of cancer, or when someone's in a hospital, or someone, like, and you have those situations where no one wants to be in it, I figure that's my responsibility too, to be the strong, stoic person that can be the backbone that everybody needs. So I just remember when my mom passed, my sister was a mess because she was with her the last 6 months of her life. And my brother was a mess. And I was, every time people saw me, I was stoic. I wasn't crying. And I needed to be there for my family. And even my dad, he was kind of, he wasn't weirded out by it, but he was kind of like, hey, it's okay to show emotion. Like, are you okay? And my wife asked me, what's going on? And I said, this is my job in my family. Like, my sister was my mom's rock. Like that, they were really close. It was like, it was crazy. Like, one week my sister would call me, I can't stand mom. Then I go home, they both hanging out like they're best friends. It's like, wait a second, what what happened? And then, my brother, who's my twin brother, but he's younger, um, he's not great at showing negative emotion or hurtful emotion. So he broke down, and he's a strong, Navy guy, but when it comes to our parents, like, he broke down. And I know my dad was going through the worst pain he's ever been through in his life. So I'm thinking, okay, I have a job to do. I got to make sure that if someone needs to talk to somebody in the family, if someone needs to make a decision, like, one of us is the strong, stoic one. Let me say this very loud and clear for anyone who thinks like me or is me in these situations. That responsibility is not yours. That responsibility is not yours. That is, take it from me, someone who's done it for his entire life. Like, it's too hard. It's difficult. And you need your time to grieve. After my grandfather's funeral, when I was 13 or 14, I didn't cry till I was back home in Atlanta by myself in a room. Not at his funeral, not at his wake, not in New Orleans where he was buried, not in the way home, not in the way there. It's like a week later when I was by myself in my room. And I had no idea. I was barely a teenager. And I'm thinking to myself, why is the emotion coming out now? It's because it never came out before. Like, you can't keep that in. It's impossible. And people who think I can keep it in, you're not keeping it in. It's going to come out one way or the other, whether it's, crying, being exhausted, sleeping, violent, something. You're going to, all that pin up emotion, it comes out. It just does. Like, you cannot keep filling a cup. It's going to overflow at some point.
I love your message. Like, thank you so much for being out here and having your podcast and coming on my podcast to talk about this. I could talk about grieving the whole freaking day. My family, when it's not funny, but when somebody dies, the easiest way for me to explain it is a Facebook block.
Yeah.
That person is gone. You don't talk about it. You take the pictures down, and that person was never here. And I'm like, but I still have cousins. I still got like family members that they came from that person. So it wasn't until my 30s now that I started learning about grieving and how it's a process and like it's something for the rest of your life that you pretty much you learn how to live with the pain.
That's
But you have to
absolutely,
talk
yeah.
about it.
That's absolutely true because like you cannot sit here and tell any me, my brother, my sister, that we're going to get over the death of our mother. Like a woman who was in perfect physical shape gets a type of cancer that affects a few dozen people in this country each year and takes her from us in 6 months. Like you can't sit here and tell me to that I'm going to get over it. I'm never going to get over that. There's a picture of my mother in my office where I work, and I'm never taking it down because and it's a picture of her, and she'd be so mad if she saw this picture because it's it was her like in a t-shirt and like she's not, no makeup, no nothing. But the reason I have it is because at that moment, like I remember that moment we were laughing together, and the feeling in that room was just like I was my mom's son. I was my mother's child. And I just remember that feeling. And every time I look at that picture, I don't care how either of us look. I just remember that feeling. So just like a person with anxiety, depression, like you're not going to cure these things. Like they're not going to go away. You know, somebody that has bipolar disorder, someone that has, that has dementia. Hopefully one day we find a cure for that. But all these are things that people aren't going to get cured by a pill or a drug, even though the Adderall that I take for my ADHD helps me. Like I still have moments during the day where it's like, what the hell was I doing for the last 15 minutes? Like I'm just in la la land. And so we have to learn to live with these things. Like it's anybody with dark skin knows if you get a cut, like you're gonna have that mark for the rest of your life. Like you're not, I don't know how much cocoa butter you put on it, you're gonna have that mark for the rest of your life. And so that's the kind of thing, like mental health issues are the same way, but we just can't see them. We have to learn to live with them and cope through them. And I personally think, I'm going to say this, I personally think most people on this planet go through some form of mental health issue. And what I mean by that, it doesn't mean you're being diagnosed with depression or anxiety or anything like that. That means, remember the first time you talked to the girl that you liked. Remember the first time you saw that boy that you liked. You're like, oh, and you had that thought, like you had that stress. No one could see your stress. Like no one could see it. Like unless you clammed up and like fainted, no one could see that stress. That's your mental health. And people either, you know, take that stress head on and go talk to them. They hold that stress in and, flee the situation and just, clam up all night. Like that's all mental health. Like people, when I talk about mental health, I'm not talking about the things that are diagnosed. I'm talking about everyday life. People clam up before a big interview. People want to do well in front of a date. People wake up in the morning and think, oh, it's Monday morning. Like these are all forms of mental health that we have to continue to talk about and help people to cope with it.
Yeah. And Yeah, I love ending the stigma about it because yeah, everybody deals with something. Sadness, anger, all the feelings. So if you lost your shit at work because a coworker triggered you some way, somehow,
Mhm.
you're dealing with mental health issues. And that's what people don't understand. I am getting diagnosed because I speak about it on social media. So I want to have backup like, hey, I really know what I'm speaking about because I'm going through it. And now I'm on, I have the papers.
Mhm.
So now I can understand. It's not to label myself as anything,
Right.
but just pretty much like I told the psychologist, he was cracking up. I say, well, sir, I'm here for research. He's like, well, that's the first.
Yeah.
I say, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fine, but my brain is different. So can you help me understand my brain?
Right. And that's what you did is what so many more people need to do. Like it's funny, we will do everything to take care of a physical issue or an ailment, or like the moment, people start aching, we'll pop an aspirin or something, or Tylenol, or if something like I had an issue with my knee the other week. I made a doctor's appointment in one day, in one day. And I was like, and I got the diagnosis, got some ice, compression, all that good stuff. I took care of it because it hurt. People will let their mental issues linger for generations, for generations. People of color, it hurts sometimes. It hurts just to be like that 30 days where we had George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. Like that 30 days, that 1 month, that couple weeks where all that hit at once. Black folks, like most of us didn't, like we weren't involved. We weren't there. We probably didn't know them. But remember how you felt. I remember exactly how I felt. Like it had nothing to do with us physically. We weren't there, but we saw what was happening. And to see a woman gunned down in her house and it be covered up, to see a man's knee on top of another man. And in my state of Georgia, to see two white men gun down another black man running, and then another white man have the audacity to think, hey, if I leak the video, this will show everybody we're innocent. Like, if you don't believe in white privilege, like someone thinking leaking a video of his friends murdering somebody will get them off, that's the privilege that you have. And I remember I was leading a group of people at a company I used to work for. And I think it was a team of like 10 or 12. And there was 4 black people on my team, mostly women on my team, because I was, I know we talk about, women's issues and want to make sure representation. I'm intentional about the people I hire, and I want to make sure it's a diverse group of people. So, but when that week hit, I I had a meeting with all the black people on my team. It was 3, I think 3 black women and 1 black man, or maybe 2 and 1, I forgot what it was. But I said, hey, I can't work this week. Like, it's been really hard, and I'm going to tell the team what's going on and why I'm affected emotionally by this week. And I said, I want to mention you two. Like, you're working here with me. You're black. We've talked about this, and every one of them, thank God, were like, yes, thank you for doing this. Like, we want to be mentioned. We want people to understand what we're going through. And I remember having a meeting, just throw on a calendar, 15 minutes. And I told my team, hey, it's hard for me to lead you this week after what's happened. Like, I can't focus, I can't concentrate. I'm scared when I leave my house. I live in Georgia. I go for runs. Like, I live in a suburb of Atlanta, but there's a cow farm like half a mile from me. and I run by it. And the last thing I need is for someone to think I'm running away from something or running to something, and for them to think they have the ability to shoot me. And I was like, I'm your leader from 8 to 5, and I can stop being your leader. I was like, I can never stop being a black man. I can never stop being a black man. And the reactions I got were fascinating, to be honest with you. Like, I had one person on my team not talk to me for a week. And it wasn't because he didn't want to. He just never like had a manager speak like that. And he had no idea how to talk to me. And that's the thing. If there's any like white people listening to this, and you're in your head, you're like, I want to be an ally. I want to speak up for them. I want to join the conversation. How do I do this? You just open your mouth and talk. Don't use slang. Don't try to be cool. Don't try to emulate us. Don't try to fit. No. Hey, Marc, I heard what you're saying, and I want to understand more. Do you mind if we talk? And I'm going to say one of two things. I'm going to say yes or no. If I say no, guess what? There's so many more people who will talk. And by the way, I'll always say yes. I'll always say yes. So I'll, just so you know. But it's one of those things that we've never really talked about it before. How we, of course, seeing things on TV and live is new. It's still new. People remember Rodney King, but that was a one-off. That wasn't supposed to happen. Now people know someone is going to record it all the time. So this is all new, and we have to let ourselves process it. It's best to just try to process it, try to understand it, work through your feelings. And I like the fact that you have, what was the thing for your panic attacks? Like a bag or something that
A survival kit.
Survival kit. I love that. And people need to have, because that is your coping mechanism. You know what you're coping, what you need. Like, we need to prepare for the times we're going to be really stressed out. And when I mean prepared, not alcohol, not drugs, not, driving, not doing things that are destructive, but you have music, you have people you can call, you have, if you're spiritual, there's probably Bible verses out of the Quran, out of the Torah. I know what, there's a couple songs that if I have on a playlist on Spotify, my wife ever walks in and hears it playing, she's like, oh, let's talk. What's wrong? I'm like, oh, you know me so well.
Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, we do have to have a survival kit or anything that helps you make it through the day or make it to the circumstances. Because what I have learned, what I have dealt with anxiety, is that once you're in the danger zone, logic goes out the window. So yep, it doesn't matter, because my boyfriend is 100% mental health is crap, and we should like move on and let it go and everything else. And I suck it up, buttercup. And I'm the opposite of like, let's feel the feelings and let's do this and let's do that. So that's why I pay a therapist.
Well, I mean, would if you broke up with him tomorrow, how would he feel?
Well, I break up with him at least once a week, so he just waits 3 days for me to
waits
feel better.
Okay. Well, I mean, technically, he knows the process.
Oh no, and he even has his own survival kit too for dealing with me.
Well, here's the thing about so it's funny is that the great thing about mental health is whether you believe we should talk about it, whether you believe we shouldn't, whether you believe it's real, whatever it is, it's still there. Like, it's still there. Like, it's people still get sad, get emotional, get happy. Like, if ever you've been gone for extended amount of time, or he has, and you guys see each other and he's filled with joy and he hugs you, and like that's an emotional response to you. That's mental. That's mental health. Like, that's the thing about it. And I personally think and people don't have to agree with me, but I personally think that the more we talk about it, one, we start ending the stigma on it.
Yeah.
We're still a long way away from it. And I'll tell you the exact moment when the stigma will be lifted. We know there's shootings in America. We understand that. We know, unfortunately, the gun culture we have, I'm not going to get political. It's just, these are facts. Like, we have an issue where we have it's too easy. We have mass shootings. And one of the first things that's always mentioned is that, oh, we have to really focus on mental health and mental health education and getting people the help they need. Mental health is not a scapegoat. Mental health is not something you bring up when you feel it's necessary to, direct people a different way than where they should be going. Like, the fact that you feel 30 minutes before the shooting, you weren't even thinking about mental health. But once the shooting happens, like, oh, we need to worry about mental health. Like, no, that's not how this works. Like, there's people struggling in this country that won't go and shoot up a school. They won't go and shoot up a mall. They will just struggle in silence by themselves. We need to worry about this all the time. And once we can get to a point where mental health is just not used as a scapegoat for a talking point, then we'll be past the stigma. But we're still a long way away from it. How many people will honestly go up to a stranger and tell them, I'm in therapy, I'm in counseling right now, I'm on antidepressants?
Oh no, my coworkers look at me crazy because I'm like, okay, I gotta go. I got a therapy appointment.
Yes.
They're like, what is wrong with you, woman? You're not supposed to talk about that stuff.
You're saying the quiet part out loud. Yeah. I mean, it's just, but if you fell and bruised your knee, like, oh, I got to go to the ER. I got to go urgent care real quick. Like, it's no different. There's no difference to it. One you can see and one you can't. And I do the same thing on my calendar. I would block out the hour a week and it would say therapy on it. I don't, because if I do that, if I show people, hey, this guy's kind of cool, like, we like him, he treats us well. Oh, Friday from 11 to 12, is that therapy? Oh, for real? We can talk about it. I should ask him about it. Yeah, I'm gonna ask him about it. Oh, he's gonna do a presentation on it. Oh, and it's like, oh, I don't know if I'm not gonna curse, but it's like, oh,
you're fine.
It's like, oh shit, like, Marc talks about this. It's like, yeah, Marc talks about it. Like, I talk about a lot of things. I talk about sports, talk about my dog, talk about my kids, talk about my wife, talk about, going to school at Clemson, talk about a lot of stuff. Guess what's part of my life too? The fact that I was on antidepressants once, the fact that I've been on anxiety meds, the fact that I'm on Adderall right now, the fact that I go to therapy once a week. That's part of me too. Like, why are we hiding this? Like, do people know therapy is actually a real job? Do they know counselors exist? Like, what do they think? All the counselors just, their offices are empty because no one goes to it.
And like, even some jobs will offer EAP. Oh my gosh, I don't know what it stands for, but you can
Employee Assistance Program. Yeah.
Of course it does. Thank you. And some jobs offer it. I have been on and off through the post office. I'm actually on my last session at the end of the month. But I also have a mentor because I found a life coach because of my trauma. Even with all the therapy, I still couldn't speak. I still can't speak about my trauma. And she's helping me. And after almost 10 grand, she got me where I want to be. And I just needed the tools because I do love therapy. I still go because with therapy, I give myself grace.
Yes.
And compassion, and I understand more.
Great word, grace. Great word.
I learned that one not too long ago.
It is.
And it's still work in progress.
Yes. Well, and I tell you, for anybody listening, like, please understand that therapy is not I'm going to go once and it's going to be fixed. Like, please understand excuse me, and even know that a lot of the times you won't click with a therapist. Like it won't be, and they know this. Like they tell you, at least most of them tell you, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but please don't give up. And I have a story about that because the the first time I went to therapy was when I was in Clemson, and I played sports, and I got into a situation where I was not the best person on the team for the first time in a long time, and everybody was better than me, and I didn't feel like that big fish in a small pond anymore. I felt like a very tiny fish in an ocean, and I did not know how to cope. And I remember going to therapy, walking. I don't know, to this day, I cannot tell you how I got there. I cannot tell you what got me out of bed in the morning, made me walk to our medical center and ask to speak to a counselor. I don't know what happened. All I know is that I got there and I spoke to him for 9 weeks straight. And it was the best decision I'd ever made in college. And then, and I tell this story often because I think people need to know, like, I'm not kidding when I talk about, being in some dark places. There was one night at a job I had when I was in my 20s. I can't remember, mid 20s, late 20s, and dead end job, drinking too much, eating too much, not really in a good place with my mental health. Physical health was terrible. Um, Overdoing everything, in debt, and I thought that I couldn't see any light into the tunnel. And I remember I'm living in the DC area at this time. And anybody familiar with DC knows we have the Beltway, and then we have this 270 which comes off the Beltway. And I'm
It's
going,
insane.
yeah, it's terrible. That's horrible. It's horrible enough. So I'm on, it's called the 270 spur, and I'm going home. So I'm going from 270 to the Beltway. And it's a spot where like 3 lanes from 270 merge with like 5 lanes or 6 lanes from the Beltway, and there's like 6 lanes. It's a terrible interchange. But I'm in a work truck. I'm driving home, and I'm like, all I have to do is just swerve this thing into oncoming traffic, and someone's going to have to listen to me. And I'm not lying, I was probably 7 to 8 seconds away from doing it. Wasn't married at the time. I was dating the woman who became my wife. Like and like I remember that night so vividly. I remember the headlights coming the other direction. I remember the big white truck I was in. And I just said, if I just swerve this into the median, into oncoming traffic, if I survive it, someone's finally going to listen to me. Thank God I did not do that. Thank God. But I remember at that moment, the next day, I went on to EAP and I called it. They set me up with a therapist. I don't remember the therapist's name. I don't remember where his office is. I don't remember anything about him other than that he felt very smug to me. Like he's probably the quintessential therapist that people think about. And he did nothing for me. He really didn't listen. He knew he was getting paid by EAP. We got through the 3 sessions. He didn't offer me any more sessions. And he said, okay, this is the end of your therapy. And I'm like, wait a second. Like I'm still hurt. Like I'm still damaged. Like I know this isn't what therapy is. I know this isn't what therapy is. But I went almost a year before I said I have to try again. I end up like being a terrible employee, getting fired, being unemployed for almost 3 months, barely making it through, sleeping on friends' couches, getting a new job, thank God. And I remember the first time I saw my new therapist, we had um, few sessions. I remember one of them, I was like, all right, so I guess we'll be ending this soon. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I mean, it's, I know I only get a few. He's like, you're not done. You're not even close to you. We'll end it when it's time to end it, but you're not even close to being done. And I was like, oh, this is what's supposed to happen. And then I remember talking to my manager about it. I said, hey, I have to tell you something. I just want you to know every other Thursday, I get out of here about 30 minutes early and go to therapy. And his reaction was so amazing. Oh, that's great that you're doing that. Please let me know how I can help. That's no problem at all. You take care of yourself, and please let me know if there's anything else I can do for you. 2 weeks later, he, called me and asked me how I was doing with it. I was like, wait a second, there's people in this world that care? Like, that's crazy. Like, that's, wait, wait, wait a second. This is in my Kevin Hart voice. But, I mean, just, but I mean, so anybody listening to that extremely long story, I understand. But what you can get out of it is like, there are more people in this world that care than the opposite. Like, you can look up Relatively Normal Podcast. My information is there. If you want to email me, if you want to text, whatever, like, I will listen. People will listen to you, but people aren't mind readers. And I
Mm-hmm.
know, and I know most women would like their men to be mind readers. I understand that. That's a little jab. I'm sorry. That's a little jab. I had to get it in there. but and I tell my wife, like, listen, I'm stupid. I'm dumb. Like, I'm pragmatic. Like, I don't see innuendo. Like, just tell me what you want. But people aren't mind readers. Like, we can read cues like, oh, it's Marco, but courage, you have to find a way to gain it. You have to, for your own good. And we could talk about how you gain it, but it's just the main way you gain it is you prioritize yourself. You say, I am worth it. I'm worthy. I'm appreciated. Once you say those things over and over, it's like, oh, so I can bring this up. So just make sure you prioritize yourself. Don't get to dark places without knowing that you have someone on speed dial real quick. I tell you, right, I got 5 people right now I could call right now if I was in a situation. Doesn't matter what time
Mm-hmm.
of the night it was, you know, and they'll pick up and they'll talk to me. And if they don't, they will feel extremely bad. I hope they don't, but they would. So, yeah, make sure you prioritize yourself.
Yeah, even with my boyfriend with the Suck It Up Buttercup, he's still the first person I call. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going nuts. So yeah, you do have to have your own community. And I want to say about EAP that yeah, they offer six, at least for us, is 6 sessions. You can request for more if you're needed, or if not, at least that's the first step to get you to find another therapist. And I know it could be stressful thinking you're starting again over, but at least you have a roadmap of, like, they give you a roadmap of what's going on, so
Yep.
you have a little bit idea where to go next.
And there are, I mean, there are programs out there. They're federally funded, state funded programs, locally funded programs that if you need help, you can get the. It's not as, and I hate the fact that as a country, as a state, as whatever, like, we don't make it as accessible as it needs to be. But the fact that the suicide lifeline just came out with the text messaging with the 988, like, that's a huge,
Oh
like,
wow.
people don't realize like how huge that is. Like, and people, and I know it's kind of, people want to stay away from it because it has the word but the suicide lifeline, like, if you're in stress, or if you're in crisis, or if someone around you is, like, they're available, they're useful. And don't get to a point where you're seconds away from demise, like I was. Like, it's tough to even think about it. Like, I can't even imagine a world where I don't get to hug my daughters. I don't get to, kiss my wife. I don't get to, you know, see my brother or my sister or talk to like, I can't even imagine a life without that. Like my dog is he's looking at me right now like I don't know what this dude is doing, but I can't even imagine life where I'm not able to like pet him.
Yeah.
And I was seconds away possibly. And that's not hyperbole. Like I'm not just trying to, you know, make this fantasy situation so people feel bad for me. No, that was me.
Yeah.
That was me. And that's a lot of us. Black men, that's a lot of us, man. Talk, open your mouth. Y'all want to talk about the game, talk about AI, Jordan, LeBron, all these people you want to talk, like, go and do. Hey, the next time you don't hear from your buddy in 3 days, hit him up, ask him how he's doing. The next time, you feel stressed out, call him. We need to talk, man. Talk. We need to do that. Life is hard enough.
Yeah.
You got boys for a reason. Use them.
I love that. We didn't talk. I don't know if you had anything else to plug in to promote. This is your time to shine.
Yeah, so we didn't talk a lot about the fitness part of it, and I talked a little about. But if you want to follow me on IG, Relatively Normal Podcast is on IG, and then Payson Fitness is on there too, where I kind of go through this journey I've been on the last few months about intersecting mental health and physical health. And as always, you can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and just put in Relatively Normal, anchor.fm if you want to become a subscriber for as little as 99 cents a month. I'd appreciate that. But honestly, if you want to listen to for free, that's cool too. But yeah, that's how you get in contact with me. And like I said, if you go to the website, if you go to Facebook or IG and find me and you just want to send me a message and say, hey, I just want to talk, I will respond to you and we will talk. Man, woman, it does not matter. Because we need to talk. We need to figure this out together. We can't do it alone.
And I will have all the links in the description of the episode. Thank you so much for reaching out and coming into my show. Like, really, I don't even want to end this interview, but I want to be respectful of your time. And my stomach is like killing me because I've been starving since like noon and it's 10 p.m.
Oh my goodness. Go get something to eat. Go get something to eat.
Oh, but I love that. Thank you so much. And like I said, I will have all the description of the all the links in the description of the episode.
Thank you very much. I had a great time tonight.
Oh, awesome. So thank you so much for listening to another episode of Life with Francie podcast. Hope you have a blessed day.